Well, aloha kako. Welcome everybody and mahalo for joining us this afternoon. My name is Cassandra Smith and I serve as the Maui Nui Firewise Community Coordinator. And I'll be walking us through the 2026 Wildfire Mitigation Funding Guide on behalf of the Firewise team today. They, of course, may also chime in if I miss anything or if they want to add. They're welcome to come off mute and jump in. If possible, I'm going to ask that you save your questions for the end because we're going to walk through the guide and we're going to cover a lot of information and we very may well end up covering your question. This is going to be a high-level overview so you can familiarize yourselves with where to find the instructions and resources available. But it's way too much information to remember and process all at one time. So please keep in mind that the guide is meant to serve as a reference so you can go back and look at questions as they come up for your Firewise committee. I have about 20 to 25 minutes of info to share, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. We're going to be recording this presentation section, but we will stop recording for the Q&A and document questions in notes. All right, let's go ahead and jump into things. So the purpose of today's webinar is to go over HWMO's Spring 2026 funding opportunity that is in place to help Firewise communities reduce wildfire risk through community-wide mitigation and home hardening initiatives. These particular funds were made possible with Hawaiʻi State Legislature funding administered through the DLNR, Division Forestry of Wildlife, DOFA, as many know it. And I also want to mention that DOFA is a really key partner in supporting the Hawaii Firewise networks in many aspects. The goal of this funding cycle is to support community-wide mitigation through a cost-share approach, where Firewise communities and HWMO share the cost of wildfire risk reduction together. Communities pay for eligible mitigation expenses, and HWMO will reimburse a portion of those costs. When paying upfront is not feasible, communities may also work with HWMO to arrange direct payment to contract service providers. To further explain what we mean by cost share, I'm just going to share a couple things quickly that we are covering part of the cost of the project, but community leaders, volunteer leaders, are also contributing in-kind money or time towards the project. So this includes volunteer time with coordination, HOA or community funds, donated equipment or supplies, or other kinds of match, such as refreshments and snacks provided for volunteers. Tracking community in-kind matches is required, but we're making it simple and reasonable for everybody. There is an HWMO form available, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. Here we have the table of contents to assist you in navigating the guide, and it's broken up into 5 sections. Now I'm going to discuss the first section titled The Funding Process, and the 6 steps a community must take in order for funds to be released when a project is finished. After that, we'll look at the other 4 sections. You are here at this webinar because you completed the intent to participate form. So the deadline was January 15th, and that form is now closed. This was how your Firewise committee raised your hand and said, our site wants to participate. No project details were required yet for this initial form. Step 2 is plan your project. So the email to all sites with their funding allocation was sent January 27th this week, so you should have received that. That's the total amount your community is eligible to apply for. And a couple things to keep in mind, that planning should be done with your Firewise committee, not a solo initiative by any means. And in order to get ideas for what you should focus on, we recommend checking out your hazard assessment, your community's action plan, and then also we have an eligible expense appendix in this guide, which we'll show you in just a little bit. You also want to gather some cost estimates for the work you want to undertake so you can plan your budget and project accordingly. I want to emphasize that these projects must have a community-wide benefit and should reflect the goals and vision of more than just 1 or 2 people. All right, step 3, request funding. So once your committee is done has has done the project planning, then you must complete the funding request form by February 27th at the very latest. Our team will then review that proposal, send an official email notifying your Firewise committee that the project and requested funds have been approved. On this form, the funding request form, is where you submit your project scope and budget. That includes what you're planning to do, the time frame, how much it's going to cost, and what kind of match will be provided. If you're unsure if anything is allowable, just reach out to your Firewise coordinator before you submit this. And the sooner you get this to us, the sooner we can approve it and you can begin work. I'm just going to click on the form real quick so you can see it as well. That link is there on that page in the guide. And it has instructions as well that can still be found in the guide, but it's all in one place here. Another thing is, if you submit this, please submit as early as possible, because our Firewise coordinators may have some follow-up questions that we need answered before we can officially make this approved. Step 4 is, after the funding request starts or gets submitted, you are then getting ready to execute the project. And this includes taking photos before the work starts, thinking about how you're going to track volunteer contributions, engaging with your community about Firewise in the upcoming work, because as we know, that educational awareness component is a big part of why we do Firewise and the initiative of the program. And I'm going to say this a couple times, so bear with me here. Do not spend money or start the work until you get approval email from your Firewise team. Approval emails will go out on a rolling basis, with March 6th being the very latest you would receive a project approval email, because February 27th is the very last day that you can submit that funding request. I also want to make an important clarification. Please remember that HWMO is not the customer, your community is. So your invoices must be addressed to you or an individual in the community, not HWMO. All right, the fun part, step 5, taking action. So March to April is the time frame to implement these projects, with May 2nd being the final day that a project can be completed. Couple reminders, only do pre-approved work. And you need to be tracking those things to complete the final success and payments form, such as volunteer hours, vegetation removed, areas treated, and also other contributing match. Make sure you're taking before, during, and after photos as well while the work is taking place. And I just want to highlight that this work leads up to National Wildfire Preparedness Day on May 2nd. And also, May is Wildfire Preparedness Month for the state of Hawaii as we move into the summer season. All right, so the final step, that success and payments form, it needs to be completed by May 15th at the absolute very latest. So May 2nd, the project must be wrapped up, and this should be turned in immediately after that. No payment will happen until this form is completed and submitted. And this form includes project summary, photos, match documentation, payment details, and those 5 to 10 photos that we're requiring. Specific details on this form can be found on page 28 of the guide, and we're going to look at that together in just a little bit. This is also your chance as a community to reflect and share lessons learned so that we can continuously improve our systems in place. All right, here's our favorite slide of the guide. One-stop shop for all the dates. We already ignore the January 15th, that is POW. January 28th, the emails are out. We are here today, January 29th at the Zoom session. And then here we have the remaining things that need to be completed. And we do have the links to the 2 forms, the funding request form and the success and payments form on this page as well. It can be found in many locations throughout the guide. All right, now we're going to go over additional information. This is a section of the guide where you can find resources to help you work through those steps we just went over. And we already discussed program eligibility, so we're just going to start with Appendix B, which is allowable expenses. And I want to reiterate that funding should again support community level wildfire risk reduction, not individual level improvements. Eligibility, eligible project types include creating non-combustible areas around homes and structures, especially within that 0 to 5 foot area in the immediate home ignition zone, because that's where we know we get our most bang for our buck in terms of reducing our ignition risk. Home hardening actions like vents or screen installation or rock mulching along the borders of structures is also permissible. And hazardous, of course, hazardous fuels and vegetation reduction in neighborhoods or shared spaces. Allowable expenses include contractor fees, equipment rentals, mitigation materials and supplies, home hardening materials, and some outreach and education materials that directly support the project scope. What is not allowed with these funds is anything with earth movement, and that includes removing tree stumps or any root systems. We open up a whole can of worms, so we're just not even we're not gonna touch that. We're gonna keep everything that we do surface level. Food and refreshments are not allowed under these funds, and subscriptions and electronics doesn't work either. Another reminder that nothing can be purchased or started without formal HWMO approval. And this means you have completed the funding request form, and after a review by our staff, we will give you explicit permission for the work project to begin. This doesn't apply to the majority of funds because what we awarded is less than 10,000, but please know this at one point could be applicable to your community in the future, because if a single contractor service exceeds 10 grand, HWMO requires a procurement form to be completed and signed with 3 cost estimates and bids. Reach out to your Firewise support specialist if you think this applies, but I'm pretty sure it's not to the groups that's here today. All right, how is funding administered? Page 16. This is an important page that I would definitely bookmark because I even come back and reference it all the time. But we'll get into it in plain language, which is funding is handled in 2 ways. Either reimbursement to the community or HOA, or direct payment to contractors by HWMO. Monies will be paid out for only pre-approved expenses. Payments made directly to contractors will be required to have invoices for pre-approved expenses, copy of liability insurance, and a signed W-9 if it's not on file already with us. For reimbursement made to HOAs or individuals, the following is going to be required: invoices, receipts, which are proof of payment, completed reimbursement form, that's this thing here. We have a form that is available to sites who are seeking reimbursement, and then also a copy of contractor's liability insurance again. Regardless of the method, funding is only released after that success in payments form is complete. Invoices must be addressed to you, not HWMO. For example, invoice should be written to J. Jones in Community X for a hypothetical dumpster rental, knowing that that invoice will be passed on to HWMO. All right, tips and examples. A good place to start brainstorming is to review your community's action plan. Firewise project ideas that we want to throw out there to just get you thinking are chipper days or dumpster day events. Chipper days with signage is a great way to get a larger community interested in the work going on. And dumpsters with posters and signage is also a good way to show your Firewise community your neighbors are working to reduce risk. You should come join us. Come join the fun. So those are just 2 things that if you're just starting off as a Firewise community, they're ideas to pursue. This is your time to be creative and think big, brainstorm possible long-term solutions to address the risk in your community. Because we know maintenance, right? That's a constant. So we want to think of creative solutions to where we can upkeep the work we're doing. We also want to combine mitigation and education and engagement. Because as we know, big part of Firewise, we don't operate in silos. We're about trying to educate the whole community about their role they can play in reducing risk. And then also, go grazing, community work days, having a shared supplies that the community can use for mitigation. That's also something that can be done. And I just also want to say that you should be celebrating and sharing success with your community and your Firewise team, because this is supposed to feel good. It's not meant to be a drag. There should be some fun involved, right? So just keep that in mind as you're going about making your plans. And I will say that the key idea here is that the strongest projects reduce risk and bring people together. So it's about the on-the-ground action is just as important as the engagement that takes place between neighbors and community members. And a link here is, oops, sorry guys. The link here, if I can get to it, my Zoom screen is blocking it. Oop, is the links to past events. Sorry, shield your eyes. But this is our HWMO mitigation funding report from last year. It has all the projects in there. So this is a good place to get some inspiration from as well. All right. Now we're jumping on to page 19, where this is an example of sorry, my screen here. Here's a snapshot overview of what a successful project can look like from start to finish. And it aligns with those 6 steps that we just went over in the first section. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed, this is a great roadmap and a great place to refer to as you're navigating this. And it also has links to the forms again, the funding request form and the success and payments form. I think there's about 5 different pages with the links on it. And I really highly recommend checking this out. Okay, documenting your work. We're getting into appendices G through I. And I just want to start off by saying and reiterating that we're not asking for documentation to make more busy work for anybody. The information that we're asking for, it's critical to show funders so we can continue to pursue grant monies to support our annual Firewise community mitigation work. It's about telling the story about how awesome you guys are. And so before, during, and after photos, those are really key. Please get some action shots of the work happening if possible. And if you do not have permission, please don't take pictures of faces, because we are going to put that into our final report for funders and other Firewise people to see. So just be mindful of that. This is the first time we're requiring a HWMO match document form to be submitted, but we have asked, this is not a new thing, because in the past we have asked questions about community in-kind contributions in the previous reports, but now we just have a little more formalized document for that. And so it's not totally new, it's just a new way that we're documenting to improve our funding leverage. Things that count as volunteer match for time include project planning, logistics coordination, actual implementation, the reporting, gathering information, all of it is counted, right? And cash in-kind donations can look like equipment rentals being donated, contractor fees being paid for by the HOA or something of that nature. And then money spent invested in home and property hardening. Those can all count as in-kind cash matches. Please reference page 24 for 2 examples of how in-kind documentation can look in practice, right? Because we're just talking about this hypothetically, but here it gives you a little bit of a concrete idea of what you can put down. So one of these events is a green waste dumpster. Another one is a community work day. And it just shows you the types of hours that you can document as match from these things. And here you can also find the link to the match form as well. It's in there a couple times as well. All right, measuring and reporting mitigation results, page 25. This has tips on keeping track of the basic outcome metrics, areas treated, fuels removed, participation. And you want to have a way to track this during mitigation activities. a lot of this information is also asked for in the Firewise portal application. And the portal has this tool you see here that can show you an estimated amount of the materials removed. And so I like to use this tool because, or you got to Google and kind of make some kind of quantifiable um, number, right? But this is a good way for guesstimating your amount of vegetation removed. And we get you may not have information provided by the greater community on all the work that's being done related to Firewise, but at the very least, document the time and investment from your Firewise committee and members, and use best estimates for individual home preparedness. Estimates are okay. Clear and reasonable is better than perfect. I really like that saying, and I want you guys to hold on to that too. Form details. This is the part that I think is going to be very helpful for many of you because it explicitly lays out in page 27 what will be asked in the funding request form. And then in pages 28 through 30 are details about what will be asked in the success and payments form. Especially the success and payments form, I would recommend even maybe printing this out or making a copy. And so you can take notes while the project is ongoing. I think that is a good way to go about it. And if you track the information as you go, filling out the form at the end isn't going to feel so cumbersome. And you're going to thank yourself if you read this now. So you at least are going into the project knowing what you have to track. All right. Woo! Mahalo, everybody. That was a lot of information to take in. I hope you guys are taking some notes while it's fresh in your brain. And please remember that the county Firewise coordinators are here to support you. So reach out early and ask clarifying questions. Um, I I did that in about 20 minutes or so. So we did a pretty high level overview. Happy to jump into some specifics.